What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sitdown. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit the like button and let me know what you think of the discussion in the comment section below. Also, if you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or living under a rock, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another Sit-Down video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get into another organized crime topic. And over the years, over the time I've done my look into crime, I'm constantly asked about the police. We've talked a little bit about the police on this show over the years. Obviously, we know about people like Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, two of the most corrupt individuals in the history of law enforcement in America. Over the last couple of years, I've watched some great documentaries about the police, particularly corruption. One of the best documentaries I've ever seen in all documentaries is a film called The 7-5. You can find it on Netflix and other streaming platforms. I did some digging and came across one of the main subjects of that documentary, an individual called Ken Yarell. Ken Yarell is a retired police department worker for the New York City Police Department. He's written a book called Betrayal in Blue, the shocking member of the scandal that rocked the NYPD, and he joins us today. Ken Yarell, I've been trying to get you on this show for a good amount of time. I think you're in one of the greatest documentaries ever put out. How you doing today, my man?
Good. I'm good. I'm glad to be on the show, man. I know you've been contacting me for a while. I've had some personal issues that I had to, get over before I started doing interviews for other people. So I'm glad to be on your show.
Yeah, and I know you were very, you're very upfront about what you had going on. I want to send my condolences to you, Ken. I know your wife was a gleaming part of the documentary. I knew she was very supportive of you. She was a great woman, and I wanted to send you my condolences.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, she was a true ride or die, right down to the last moment. So she stood by me behind everything.
It's hard to find those types of women nowadays, Ken. I'll
That's
just tell
for
you
sure,
right now.
man. She stood through everything. Give me 35 years of marriage. I was blessed.
I bet. Yeah, it sounds like it. But I wanted to get in your story from the beginning. And on this channel, we talk about the mafia, organized crime, all that sort of thing. But we find ourselves a lot. I've talked to judges. I've talked to FBI agents. This is the first time I'm talking to a police officer. And look, obviously you were not connected to the mafia whatsoever. But you grew up. You were born in Ozone Park, right? In the early 60s?
Correct. 1968. I was born in Ozone Park. And within, I think it was less than a year, my parents moved to town in Queens called Rosedale. It's right on the Nassau border.
I'm always fascinated about this with people that are non-members of the mafia and have never had any connection to it. You grew up in New York. What do you know about the mafia? Do you know anything about it? Was it pervasive in your community? What was that? Tell me about your childhood in general.
Childhood was typical childhood. Lots of sports back then. Playing in, if it wasn't organized sports, we got a couple of guys together from the neighborhood and we go to the schoolyard or the park. Playing stickball at the schoolyard, play, some baseball, touch football on the street. It was all sports back then. So
what was your family like? Were they law enforcement people? Were they firemen? I think I remember from the film that your family was in law enforcement. Is that correct?
No law enforcement at all. It was my old man was a construction worker. He did 50-something years in the union. So as a teen, he used to take me, on my days off from school, weekends and Christmas holidays, things like that. He used to take me on the job and show me construction. And I think he did it to show me how hard the life was. So I'd be out there doing construction, and then he tried to push me because he, as a union worker in construction, if it rained or sick, the union benefits didn't include unlimited sick days, didn't include, the weather conditions are bad, you can't work, you don't get paid. So he pushed me towards a city job, sanitation, firefighter, police officer. And, back when I was a teen in the 70s, I think the first test came out, 1975 was layoffs in the NYPD. And they didn't do another test, I think, until 1978. And I took the first test and came out, and I did well. So I got hired by the PD right away. They started doing my interviews, psychological investigations, all that, medicals, before I turned 20 years old. As soon as I was 20, they hired me.
We hear about this, from most cops that become cops or were cops really in your time, that there was a passion for it. They were called to do it. Is that something you felt like you had? Was that something you felt Like, did you just do it because you needed a job, or did you more feel like you were called to that career?
No, it was definitely about getting a job, getting a career, as opposed to what I was doing at the time. I was working in an electronics factory out on Long Island. Didn't see a career in that. And again, with the influence, I guess, from my parents, get a city job, you'll have job security. So I started taking the test, and police department called right away.
And you were a cop. You mentioned recently that you were in the academy, obviously for the 6 months or so that you do, and then you were on the street by 20. Is that correct?
Yeah,
20 years old.
20 years old. Yeah,
amazing. So early. Did you feel you were prepared to hit the streets? You knew you were gonna. You obviously, New York's a dangerous place. You're probably not gonna go out and be in one of these really nice areas. Do you feel you were prepared? Did they prepare you enough for it? I guess you're never really prepared, are you?
They give you very by the book teaching in the academy, and as soon as you get out on the street, you got all the veterans telling you, forget that. Basically like every movie you ever seen about rookies going out into the street. Forget what you learned in the academy, kid. I didn't have as much culture shock as a lot of guys. A lot of guys came from Long Island, and then they got stuck in Brooklyn or the Bronx, and it was a big culture shock to them. I grew up in Queens, one of the 5 boroughs. And it was, right next door to Brooklyn. I was in Brooklyn many times as a teenager, go down there to clubs or bars. So it wasn't too much of a culture shock. And where we went, when we did our probation for the first 6 months out of the academy, they pretty much, you weren't too much alone. Like I went to the 7-7 precinct, which is Bed-Stuy. And when you walked a foot post, there was a rookie cop on every corner. So as you go out into a regular precinct, if you get a foot post, you're alone for 10 blocks. So it was a big difference. But it was, to give everybody security and make sure you're feeling safe, I guess, and learn the job.
I want you to tell, I heard a story that you told about when you first became a rookie and you went into the kind of like the lunchroom or like the place you eat, and one of these older like sergeants or whatever comes up to you and asks you for money. And you thought, was he kind of like trying to shake me down to sit in here? Tell the story.
So what happened, like I said, I worked in the 7-7 precinct. I was on Utica Avenue. And they had an annex because the precinct was pretty large. So they had an annex off-site, like on the other side of the precinct. So we were working out of the annex that day, myself and my rookie partner that I went through the academy with. We both went to Bed-Stuy to 7-7. And we're walking a foot post. And the annex was actually the old 7-7 precinct station house before they built the new one on Utica Avenue. So we go there for our meal, and this is, old. You can walk in, there's a big old wooden desk, old white-haired sergeant with the beard and everything. And they actually filmed a few scenes from Serpico there. So, it was very cool and interesting to us. And as rookies, we went into the lounge. You get an hour for meal, and we sit down, and it was a ball game on. It was a weekend. You take your gun belt off, your jacket, and hang it up to relax a little for the hour. Old timer came to us. He goes, "Rookie, give me $1. Rookie, give me $1." He's going around the room collecting $1 from everybody. And as a rookie, we had no idea what this was for. We thought maybe you had to pay $1 for a kiddie, to sit in the lounge, that they collected, whatever, coffee, cakes in the morning, who knows, bagels. So we give him $1. 10 minutes go by. Guy comes back with like 6 cases of beer. Flops him down on this floor, and now there's also a sergeant in there. And the sergeant goes, "Take a beer, rookie." So he's testing us to see if he could trust us, even though we don't really work with him, because as rookies, we have a completely different sergeant. We don't work for the sergeant from the 7-7. It works with the regular officers. So I guess he's testing us because we're in his, this is his spot. And as rookies, we drink a beer, we drink a second beer in an hour, the hour's up. So our meal hour's up. We get up, we start putting our gear back on, and the sergeant's like, "Where you going, rookie?" I was like, "Meal hour's over, boss. We're going back out to post." And he's like, "Sit down. You get more than 2 beers for $1." All right, he's the boss. What are we going to tell no to the boss? I'm a 20-year-old kid. So we sat there for the rest of the tour. It was probably another 4 or 5 hours left in the tour, just drinking beers all day.
So you never reported to the post that day?
No. And once we reported in the early section, and then once we had meal, we never went back out.
Right.
And then
Was
we
that a
went back to
normal
location, and we were reeking of alcohol. No one said nothing.
was that normal?
It was normal back then,
So you
1980.
learned pretty quickly, and as you alluded to, when you came out of the academy, it's almost just, hey, screw what you remember there. This is how we fucking do it here.
Exactly.
That's how it worked, right? So
Yep.
it was. Is that the first earliest parts you learned where this is how you game the system in a way? You know.
It wasn't so much about gaining the system for myself and my rookie partner. It was
You were
go
just doing what you were
go
told.
along to get along, basically, as you know, as kids.
And that was also a way of you kind of learning the secrecy of being a cop. You know, you're not going to run and you're going to do what you're told. You're going to stay in line just like any military system would be. And that's that. You do what you're told. You maybe do things you should
Exactly.
do.
We're not challenging anybody at that point.
Right. So your early career is a typical cop. You're in a tough neighborhood, Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is a tough neighborhood, as we all know. And if you don't even live in New York or not from New York or don't know New York, it's very tough. Was there a place you didn't want to go when you became a cop? Like, I don't want to go there. Did you have like a list?
Yeah, back when you're in the academy, they pass around a list. They call it the dream list, and you put down where you want to go. So I put down the 105 precinct because that's where I lived. That was my neighborhood. But you quickly learn that you don't go to where you live because at that time they were worried about if you go where you live, you're going to run across people you know, and that tends you to break the rules for them and corruption. Now it's sort of the flip. Politicians want you to work in the precinct you live because then you'll care about the area more. So it's twofold, It can go either way.
Right. So tell me when your career takes off. You're a cop for a certain period of time. You're learning you're learning the business. You're learning what you do. 7.7's tough. Tell me about the transfer to the 7.5. Tell me about how you eventually meet Mr. Dowd, Michael Dowd. How's that all work?
It was probably two maybe 3 years before I met Dowd. Went to the precinct. Was typical Joe cop, go out in the street, found a partner, hooked up with a veteran. He had probably 16, 17 years on the job, working there his whole career. He knew the neighborhood inside and out. He actually had an illegal apartment with a girlfriend in the projects. And every job we went on, this guy knew everybody in the neighborhood. They're offering us drinks and, beers. We could sit down, have dinner with people. So again, it's that twofold thing, why you shouldn't work in a precinct where you live, because you know everybody and you tend to,
not
bend the rules both ways. So I was typical Joe cop, made my arrest, did my thing, and I got in a little trouble probably 2 years into the 7.5. I threatened the sergeant to break his finger, shove it up his ass because he was disciplining me. And the next day I came in, they transferred me out. I went to the 8.8 for a year, and then I came back to the 7.5.
You talked about that. I've heard about that. You basically, he was one of these like really by the book cops, and you kind of were thinking to yourself, this is, one of the most dangerous posts in the city. No one really cares about the way your shoes look or anything like that.
Exactly.
This guy was just like a stickler for the rules. And was that something were you someone that had always like not challenged authority, but you kind of had a streak to where you're not going to be told what to do, and it's just not how it works here.
Again, not at the beginning. At the beginning, it was go along to get along. But as you're in the 7.5, which was at that time a nightmare, you get jaded very quickly, and you learn that I'm not working Midtown Manhattan. My shoes got to be shined, my tie's got to be done up to the neck, and your sleeves got to be buttoned up. So you roll your sleeves up on a hot day. You take your tie off to the side. Your shoes might get dirty every 5 minutes because you're walking through an empty lot with bricks and building debris. You're going into abandoned buildings. It's not the same as Manhattan.
Yeah, you're in the belly of the beast. You got to do what you got to do to survive. Let me ask you.
He was a rookie. He was a rookie sergeant. He just made the list, and he was trying to go by the book. That's what it was. And at the end of the day, he had followed us to a couple of jobs, and he was telling us, "Hey, I just told you to do your tie. Why is your tie off again? Why are your shoes dirty?" It's like, I'm getting a job after job after job. You want me to take a break to go shine my shoes, and they're going to get dirty on the next job again? It's not going to happen. So he was yelling at me at the end of tour when we were ready to go home. And as he's yelling, yelling, and there's two tours, one tour going in, one tour going out. So there's like 80 cops milling around, getting their cars and their radios and all that. And as he's yelling at me, he's pointing his finger at me like he's, a teacher disciplining a little kid. And I was like, I could hear you fine without you jabbing your finger at me. And he's like, I'll jab my finger at whoever I want. And I said, do it again. I'll break it off and shove it up your ass. And his mouth dropped open and he just walked away. And I signed out. I went home. I came in the next day. Obviously, he made a complaint and the CO had me transferred out. I was gone.
He was one of those, stripe kind of guys.
Exactly.
What I'm told.
And he was a new sergeant, so he was trying to, show his authority.
Absolutely.
Instead of being friends.
I want to ask you about the neighborhoods you're policing in, East New York, Bed-Stuy. You would agree that, there are two worlds in this country, okay? The ones that most of us live in, and there's a different level of another subworld where, certain places live a completely different life than we do. There's codes, there's things that you do, there's things you don't do. There's a different level of politics in those sorts of places. How did you learn those sorts of things? Is it just being partnered with the right people? How did that work?
Just by experience. The more you did, you quickly, and in a place like the 7-5, you learn quick. If I was working in Queens, I might handle 5 to 10 jobs a night. In the 7-5 on a 4 to 12 tour, you were handling 25 jobs a night. So you're learning at an advanced pace. It's almost like if you relate it to poker, guys back in the 70s, they played hand by hand. So it took a lot longer. Now with poker apps, they're playing, 100 times the amount of hands in the same time it took to play a couple of hands live.
Right.
So you learn at an advanced rate.
Right. Gotcha. So you eventually, you go to the 80. What's the 88? That's Coney, or where is that?
The 88 was a nice place. It was,
right.
I forgot what street it was, but it was right by Pratt College, downtown Brooklyn.
Oh, like Brooklyn. Okay. So kind of a yuppie type of place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me ask you, by this point, you enjoyed working where the action was, right? Or no, you wanted to be down in those places?
By that point, when I got kicked out, I enjoyed it because I was, in with a good clique of cops, and it was very close to my house. It's only, 15-minute drive down the Belt Parkway. It was real close. And, it would have been nice to maybe go to a detail or a slower precinct at some point, but I wasn't ready at that time.
So eventually you go back to the 7-5. You go to the 7-5.
Right.
Tell me about that experience initially.
Going back to the 7-5 was, first of all, it was a shock. I didn't think I was going to go back. My first day in the 8-8, I sort of had that fuck you attitude. So I put in it's called a 57. I put in a transfer to go back to the 7-5, not thinking it would ever be on it, just to say screw you and I'll show you. And a year later, they honored it. So I didn't expect to go back to the 7-5, but I ended up going back. And, I knew everybody there, so it was a very easy transition. And they gave me a choice of squads. Roll call gave me a choice of squads who I wanted to work with. And I started working with, guys I used to know. So it wasn't Dowd yet.
How does that happen, Michael Dowd? Did you know about him? Did you know the kind of cop he was? What were your kind of thoughts, and what did you hear about him?
As soon as I came back to the 7-5, it was roll call. And at that time, civilians worked roll call. They would call PAAs. And the guy warned me. He goes, stay away from this squad, which is the squad Dowd was in, and all the cops in that squad. They were known to be corrupt and out there, doing the wrong thing. So I picked another squad where I knew a bunch of guys. I started working with them. And eventually, the cop I was working with, this is another whole story, he ended up getting arrested. He was in a shooting. There was a guy came out, robbed the bodega, came out with a gun, and my partner happened to be, he wasn't my partner at the time, but he was on a foot post, and he got in a shooting, and he shot the guy. Bosses came down, they shook his hand, gave him medals for, great job, justified shooting. About 4 months later, they put him in a car, and we hook up as partners. They got him off a foot post, I guess to reward him for, a justified shooting. We're working together maybe 6 months. And there must have been some election in Brooklyn. ADA got elected, and they thought it'd be a good time to arrest the cop, And they came down and they arrested him. They pulled him off the job. They suspended him. And I have an open seat in my car. And Dowd at the same time had come back from Coney Island because he was sent there as a disciplinary problem. And when he came back, we started riding together, and that's how I hooked up with Dowd.
Does it kind of work? And I kind of relate it to a recent series I watched. I've done a show on it. These Baltimore cops, Baltimore Task Force, which I ask you about later. But they talk about in Baltimore City at the time, and really forever, if you were making arrests, it really didn't matter what disciplinary problems you had. They were just going to let you kind of do what you wanted to do. Now, you're saying, so Dowd was a disciplinary problem, but was he a good cop? Was he making arrests? Was that something that was important to the brass at the time?
He might have had a couple of arrests his rookie year. As long as I know him, he didn't make one arrest.
So it was basically he joined the police department, in essence, probably to just do what he had to do. Is that kind of what?
From what I've heard, he was a criminal prior to coming on the job, and somehow he got through the investigation and he passed, and he got on the job, and he just continued those activities.
So would you say, looking back,
as far as I'm excusing you for making an arrest if you're doing the wrong thing, that might have been a situation in Baltimore. I know that's what they said. You make arrests, they'll ignore things. The reason they were ignoring so much in the 7.5 is the 7.7 where I was working a year prior, there were 13 cops arrested for corruption. So the bosses and the politicians did not want another scandal in the 7.5.
Right. So they had already been kind of hit on the wrist a couple of times. You knew what not to. Weren't they, in essence, like going to like the fire departments and taking like ladders and all sorts of different shit to the guys
in the 7.7. Yeah, they were breaking into. I mean, we basically did the same thing. We didn't grab ladders from the fire department. Right. They busted into crack houses and steal the drugs and money, and then the guy that's in the trap house, they would give him a kick in the ass, get the fuck out of here. What is he going to do? Report I was working in a crack house?
Right. So let me ask you, in general, around that time, around all that stuff happening in the 7.7 and all that sort of thing, was the corruptness pervasive throughout the department? Let's just say you have 10 cops and they go into a drug house and there's money. How many of the 10 are going to take money at that time? Is that a pervasive problem?
To be honest, I wasn't even aware of it. I was very, I don't know if I was naive or just oblivious to the whole thing, or just I was, doing what I thought a cop is supposed to do, which is obviously not stealing and corruption. And I don't want to say, I know people accuse me saying that I'm saying Dowd made me do these things. Dowd didn't make me do these things, but he opened my eyes to them. And it just taught me a different way of doing things. And then eventually greed takes over. So I can't say how many guys were doing it prior. Obviously, there was a whole crew on Dowd's shift that was doing it, and a lot of them quit and left the department outright. A few of them got arrested. He gambled, he rolled the dice that the department didn't want another scandal, and he stayed on the job.
So you eventually become partners with Mr. Dowd. I'm sure you were initially a little kind of worried. You don't really know. You've heard things about this guy. You talked about in the film the first time you guys did what you had to do. You were on the take. That was quickly though, right? You kind of decided within like a month you were going to kind of do what pretty much it was probably noticed that everyone was doing. No one's going to miss it. These are drug dealers. Who cares? You go into a place. Tell me about that first kind of time you did it with Dowd.
Well, the first time I was exposed to it with him is totally opposite than the first time we did it together. The first time I was exposed to it, we had a call for a burglary. It was in the afternoon. A young girl just got home from school and her front door was broken open. So we were actually the backup team, but he saw an opportunity to grab money and then expose me to it. And, he can't make real money until he exposes me to it, because he doesn't know, obviously, if he can trust me or not, because he doesn't know if I ever did anything. So we get to the joint and we go through the whole place. We don't see any burglars. And he asks the young girl, he's like, does your mother have money or valuables anywhere? And she's like, I'm not sure. Let me call her. And she calls her mother at work. And the mother says, oh, yeah, it's up in our bedroom closet. Yeah, please check, make sure they didn't grab it. So as she tells this to us, Dowd instantly goes to the closet and he starts feeling around on the top shelf. And I'm not really watching him because I'm not thinking that he's going to steal anything. I'm not exposed to that yet. I'm not in that mind frame. And he grabs it and pockets, whatever, how much cash he had. I think it turned out to be $800. And he goes to the girl, nope, there's nothing here. They must have got it. So I don't think nothing. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, okay, I guess they got it. And we go downstairs. We're going to write a report. And then the sector that got the call for it shows up on the scene. So they go, oh, we'll take the report, no worries. And me and him leave. As we drive away, he fishes around in his pocket and he pulls out $100 bill and he hands it to me. He goes, here, this is for you. And I'm looking at him like, what's this? Because it still didn't click to me. He goes, you didn't even see me take it, did you? And he was like proud that I didn't see him. I was like, no. And, now I'm at a crossroads. Do I take the money and not say nothing, take the money and report him, or not take the money and be aware of it, and I'm just as guilty? So every situation, and at the spur of the, this is instantaneously, you got to make a decision. So I took it, and, I obviously don't want to cut my own throat in the department, so I took the money. And then as more time goes on, now he's explaining to me how much money is in this precinct and raiding, crack houses and drug locations where you could grab more money.
So you realize, hey, I'm only making, how much were you making a year at that point? Do you know?
When I was a rookie, it was $19,000 a year when I got hired, which is ridiculous. By that time, I was on 7 years, so probably 30,000 something.
Still not that much.
Yeah, nothing. To risk your life every day.
Right. And that's always what I find fascinating about people that join the police department. Obviously, it's a noble profession and it's a devoted thing, but you're not making any money. I mean, you're risking your life every day in some of the most dangerous places on earth, and you're making a certain amount of money. So when you come across a suspect who's cutting the corners, not working, doing something illegal, you could take a little off the top, who's going to miss it? How did you feel at that moment when you took the 100? Did you feel empowered? Did you feel like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm risking my life here. I got to take a little off the top. I got to do what I got to do.
At that instant of the $100, I didn't think anything. My head was too clouded with all the different directions it was going. As we got into it, yeah, I mean, you come across a job and you'll see 50,000 in cash and 10 kilos of coke. Who's going to report if you take it off the top? Not the guy that you're letting go, because we didn't arrest him. We would let them go. So they're like,
who's he going to go complain?
Exactly. If he gets arrested, he loses all his shit. If we don't arrest him and take a little, oh, thank you, officer, and he can continue on his day. So, and greed takes over. I try to explain it to civilians that say, why would you ever do that? Imagine you're driving behind a Brinks truck as a civilian. Doors bust open, a couple of bags fall out. Are you going to take the bags or not take the bags?
And you're the only one that sees it. Yeah.
There's plenty of videos up on YouTube where Brinks trucks have broken open and people have dash cam cameras, and you see people in a frenzy. It's like sharks in a blood frenzy, grabbing all the money.
But it's almost even like just walking down the street. You go past like a little wooded lot and you see a bag of 20,000.
Exactly.
There's
been plenty of times in Miami, shit washes up on the beach.
Yeah.
Or some type of drug deal gone bad and the money gets left behind because everyone flees. That all disappears.
Right. And you're someone that, you're, again, in the belly of the beast. You're seeing, it's not like the people that are doing this stuff are little old ladies that are down to their last $3,000 or $4,000, right? These are people that are cutting cutting the corners. They're doing what they have to do, and they're polluting the streets with narcotics. So eventually you and Dowd start doing this on a regular basis. Let me ask you, if you remember, I don't know if you do, but what was the most you ever took or saw with your own eyes?
I don't know, a lot, a truckload. Let's put it like that. I don't want to give you a number.
Wow.
It got crazy once we hooked up with the drug organizations and we started working for them. That's when shit really got out of control.
Yeah,
it's one thing to run across something randomly when you're on a call and you walk into the joint. And,
yeah, that's what I meant.
You sort of know when the call comes over the radio, you learn to read the calls like, hey, that's a drug location, or that's not a normal location for a shooting. It's probably over drugs and money. So you race there. If you get there first, you get to fill your pockets.
Yeah, you knew pretty quick. So eventually you kind of graduate, if you will. Okay, you're making money just stealing off the top, doing what you have to do during arrest. You would eventually meet a person called Baron Perez. Baron Perez is this car stereo salesman. He has this place that he does what he does. You talk pretty openly about, you and Michael, about the wife of him, beautiful woman, Yeah. Tell me about her first of all. What was she like?
Her name. Well, there's also a cop in our documentary named Chicky.
Yep.
Barron's wife was also named Chicky, but it was IE instead of Y.
Right.
So anyway, she very super attractive Hispanic woman, Puerto Rican woman. Well, we both, very attracted to her. She's a super attractive girl. So he pulled over and to, catch a rap with her, and she runs inside because Barron's already a little shady, doing shady shit. So she runs inside. Hey, there's 2 cops outside. So he came running out.
So what did you know about Barron? Did you know anything about him? You knew the kind of guy he was?
Really nothing at the time other than he was a partner in a auto repair shop, not auto repair, stereo repair shop. So you learn as a cop to get favors from business people. Like I knew a lot of mechanics that own garages. You have your car breaks down, you drop off your car, they'll repair your car for free. They'll do, your personal car. Bodega owners, free cigarettes, free booze, free soda, free lunches, all that type of stuff. So as the owner of a stereo shop, well, let's see, what type of relationship we could build with him. And the people that own businesses do that because the more cops that show up at their legit businesses, or in this case, Barron was not legit, it's a free security for them. It's way cheaper than them hiring security. If you give away, a couple of $100 in free stereos to a cop, that's a lot cheaper than, going out and having a security system, having private security, paying them all the time, because the cops will, be prone to come back. And then the neighborhood, the robbers, the bad guys realize, hey, cops frequent this location. You can't rob it.
So you were contracted initially to do security in a way. You find out that Barron Prez is basically a front. It's not really, it is car shop, but
yeah, he's doing a legit business, but with illegitimate people that are bringing in tons of cash.
Right. So you first acted as almost security for him. He was paying you how much? Like a certain amount per week?
Barron paid us nothing. He put free alarms and free stereos in.
Yeah, it was just like okay, got it.
Yeah. So it was a win-win situation. As we got to know each other better and trusted each other, he's, said, I know some drug dealers, and it was obviously, we knew he knew drug dealers because you've seen all the cars going in and out. But he goes, maybe we can make some money off this. And he introduced us to a drug dealer, and before you knew it, you're making $8,000 a week cash.
And that's when you meet a fairly interesting character from the documentary. I think one of the most, besides you, one of the more interesting people on that documentary, this guy, Adam Diaz, this, kind of, got this wild accent, just a really kind of a charming guy. I felt like he was charming. Definitely someone with a lot of, he seemed like he had ability, seemed like a smart guy. You meet this guy, Adam Diaz, who's running this multi-million-dollar drug empire in East New York. And Barron kind of makes this meeting. What's the first thing Adam Diaz says to you? Do you remember that?
I don't remember exactly the first thing. It was more Dowd was doing all the talking. We met at Barron's shop. Barron made a couple of quick introductions, and this is Adam. This is Kenny and Mike. And then Mike just went off into his spiel. We can do all this for you, and it was $24,000. And again, I got a little OCD. I don't know if you got that from the documentary.
Yes, I remember. Yeah,
I was like, to myself,
why not 25, right?
Yeah, why not 25? Why 8,000 a week? Why not 10,000 a week? It's just round numbers seem to work better when you have OCD. So anyway, it was $24,000 for him to meet us and trust us. So he came in, and we got the 24 grand. It was $8,000 a week after that, and it was every week on time. It was $8,000 in cash waiting for us at Barron's shop.
And kind of tell people, what was your role? Okay, what was that money for? Was that just for?
It was to let Diaz know when narcotics was in the area,
okay.
close to his. Well, he had multiple locations close to his locations. Hey, shut down that location, and he had a beeper. We set up beeper codes for him. If we beep you number 1, shut down the first store, 2, another store, 3, whatever.
Okay, so
we'll beep you when you reopen it, things like that. And then basically became his Brinks truck. We would move drugs and money around for him, not physically, but as a ride along, so no one would rob him on the way. He would tell us of his rival competition, and we would put in narcotics reports. So narcotics would go and hit them, and he would get a stronghold in the neighborhood.
So let's take an inventory. So you've stolen from jobs, which is somewhat. I mean, it's obviously illegal, but it's something a lot of people are probably doing. But now you're starting to actively betray the badge, and you're giving criminals intelligence that is not meant for them. You're 100%. You're protecting people that are multi-million-dollar drug dealers. I've heard a lot about. Obviously, you hear from this area, La Compañía, people like that, incredibly vicious individuals. This was a different group, though, right? This wasn't La Compañía.
La Compañía was actually the first group we worked with. We tried to do the same deal we did with Adam. It was supposed to be $8,000 a week, and the guy showed it us. He gave us like $7,400. So I don't know if his bag man grabbed some a couple of dollars out of it, or Barron grabbed it. But when we got it, it was short, and we ended the whole deal with them right away, and then we ended up meeting Diaz.
And from what Diaz has discussed, he was significantly a larger drug trafficker than those folks. Is that fair to say?
Diaz dealt in kilos, where the other group would break down the kilos and sell 8 balls, dime bags, ounces.
How many kilos
they
he moving a week?
Beyond ounces.
Do you know?
I'm sorry?
How many kilos is he kind of dealing with? 20, 30, 40?
I mean, the documentary puts a number out there that he was selling 300 kilos a week. It sounds a little exaggerated to me. So,
but even 100, I mean, that's
absolutely. He was doing big business. And again, he had 3 locations. So,
right. So as we take the inventory, so you're starting to kind of do more and more bad and worse things. But by this point, it's just part of the job. I'm making tons of money. So you're making what, $8,000 a week. That's, are you splitting it completely in half, 4-4?
Yeah, we're doing 4-4. And then we cut in Barron. We gave Barron $500 each. So we're actually taking home $3,500 each.
But still, on top of that's more than you're making, way more.
That's more than we made in a month.
Now, did you and Michael sit down and say, listen, we have to buy, if you buy things in cash, never put this, did you have that kind of
we had the discussion,
but it didn't matter. That was falling on deaf ears, right?
Yeah, it fell on deaf ears. I mean, try to hide it a little better than he did. He didn't want to. He was brazen. I mean, that's why all his original crew quit when the 7-7 went down. He's like, fuck that, and rolled the dice. Now I'm in it, and he's the same way. He's just brazen. He didn't care what anyone thought. Then he went out. Yeah, I'm sure and whoever's seen the documentary knows what he did.
And listen, we keep referencing the documentary. Every single individual that watches this video, look, Ken, we do a lot of views on this channel. Listen, every person that watches this needs to go watch the documentary if you haven't. You're crazy if you haven't. But we're just kind of touching the outer surfaces, a lot of this stuff. I do want to bring up one story, and your wife talked about this. Everyone involved talked about this. There was a situation where at one point Michael Dowd buys a Corvette with some of his ill-gotten gains. You basically told him, "Hey, listen, idiot, don't drive this. I don't know why you bought it in general, but do not drive this to the precinct." Absolutely. And within a day, he drives to the precinct.
Yeah. I didn't know he was buying it. His wife was split up for a little bit, and when his wife came back, I guess as a present to themselves, he went out to buy a brand new 1987 Corvette, red with a white convertible top. And he actually went to the dealership with cash for the entire car, which was like $37,000. And they had to tell him, "Oh, anything over 10, we got to report to the IRS." So he left, I think, like $9,500, whatever it was, and then made multiple payments. But the day he bought it, the first place after leaving the dealership he came to was my house. And he pulls in the driveway with a brand new red Corvette. I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing, man? We can't afford a brand new red Corvette. Don't, please. You already got it. Don't take this car to fucking work." I would never take it to work. Fucking next day he took it to work. Not only did he take it to work, he parked it in a sergeant spot blocking the sergeant from parking his own personal car. I mean, come on, man.
Just completely brazen,
They
obviously.
just didn't care. And then, within a week, he's fucking on the side of the precinct on the way home doing burnouts, smoking up the fucking tires. And everyone's looking at me. It's like, well, what the fuck is wrong with your partner? What are you doing? Leaving me to explain. Man, that's Mike. I don't know.
So you were thinking in your head probably, this was a matter of not if, but when
Absolutely.
this guy was going to do something fucking stupid. Now, let me ask you, I'm curious about your the rest of the precinct, the rest of the coworkers that you have, because as we know, cops have camaraderie. They're all very close. They have softball leagues and all this stuff. What is the tenor of the people around you? Like, do they kind of know what you're up to? Is this
a lot? I would say a large percentage, much like before I hooked up with him, I think was just oblivious to the things that were going on. There was a good handful that they were doing their corrupt thing, grabbing money off a job or whatever. I don't know how extensive they got. They didn't get nowhere near what we were doing. But once he started driving that red Corvette to work, I mean, everybody was like, you might as well hang a fucking sign around your neck. I'm corrupt. So
at what point do you get to the point where you start moving narcotics?
For me, that happened after I retired. Dad and I ended up going separate ways. He goes off to another precinct. I end up retiring, and I didn't see him for probably a good year.
How long did you have
on the job?
Yeah,
just under 10 years, like 9 years and 11 months.
Tell me why you retired.
What happened was, after Dad was gone, I was working a sector call with another cop, and we were doing 4 to 12. It was coming up to the end of the night, and at the end of the night, we just take a tour around the precinct, just make sure everything's secure, nobody's breaking into any businesses and everything. And we're coming up Fountain Avenue, and then the intersection is Linden Boulevard. Linden Boulevard is 6-lane highway, 3 lanes going east, 3 lanes going west, and then a service road for each. So it's actually 8 lanes. So as we pull up to the intersection, we're waiting at the light. Here comes a Camaro. It was a late model Camaro at that time, probably like a 87, 88 Camaro. This is in 1988. So it was pretty new. Comes flying through the intersection, but he's only on 3 tires and 1 rim. So fucking sparks. And it's 11:30 at night, so you see the sparks. It's not like it's hidden. So we look at each other and it's like, all right, we got to pull him over so you don't kill nobody. So we go up behind him, hit the lights, and instantly, usually when you hit the lights and somebody's dirty, they flee. Everyone sees the YouTube videos, cop chasing people. And he starts weaving in and out of blocks, these little side streets. And at that time, it was they were doing a lot of rebuild and revitalization in the neighborhood. So there was a lot of tearing down the old brownstones and putting up new construction for homes. So there's a lot of construction sites. He made a turn on a corner. It must have hit some loose sand, lost control, hit a telephone pole. As soon as he hits the pole, door flies open. And just like in a movie, the perp gets out and starts running. I jump out of the car, start chasing him. My partner takes a patrol car and he circles around the block because the guy goes into a backyard thinking he's going to come out the other side of the block. I chase him into the backyard, and there's a big stockade fence, 8-foot stockade fence, 6-foot stockade fence, and he couldn't get over it. Usually when you trap somebody, they're like exhausted, they give up, and, put your hands behind your back, you throw them up against the fence or the wall, whatever it is, and you cuff them. This kid wasn't ready to give up. So a white kid from Long Island came in to buy more angel dust. He already was high as fucking kite, and he turns around and he jumps with 2 hands onto my holster, and he's trying to yank my gun out. So instinctively, I put my 2 hands over his hands, holding his hands down so he can't get my gun out. We're tussling around, and back in Brooklyn, there's stairways going down to basements. We both lose balance. We go down the stairway. I put my hand out to brace my fall. My hand goes all the way back. I tear up the ligaments and the tendons. He goes off running. I put over the radio. The perp is, running down whatever block it was, northbound. And a couple of cops pulled up. They caught him. and he ended up going to the hospital, and I ended up going to a different hospital, and they kicked me off the job. You know, anytime you I would say 99% of the time you injure any of your fingers that you control your weapon with, or your hand, your wrist, you break your hand, tendons, you can't get back to 100%. They retire you because God forbid you go back out on the street and then there's a bad shooting, or, you know, now your weapon's taken and they research your medical history. Hey, he's not 100%. He had an injury.
Right.
They'll sue the department for millions of dollars. So the B cap is easier to give me a cheap retirement.
Right. I'm not going to compare you to a horse, but like if a horse is racing and something little happens.
Exactly. They retire them. Yeah. They shoot them and retire them.
Absolutely. So you're faced with kind of a where do I go from here kind of thing. What did you consider doing? Did you consider like security, or because at one point you've talked about at one point you did security, a side gig doing security, right?
Yeah. Before I hooked up with Dowd, I was doing it was, you know, back at that time it was very lucrative. It was $50 an hour, which was, you know, decent in 1985, 86. And it was high-end security. It wasn't like, you know, working in a grocery store in the back watching, well, there were no cameras back then, but watching shoplifters. It was, we worked the Metropolitan Opera. We worked the Russian Ballet. We worked the Robin Williams special back in 1986. So we were, you know, making decent money. And eventually I hooked up with Dowd and was like, oh, why am I working for $50 an hour? I'm making $8,000 a week. So
looking back, it wasn't so bad, was it?
Yeah, should have stayed with that. $50 an hour is still good now.
Oh, yeah, no, especially as a side thing on top of what you're doing. So you only did 10. You weren't available for a pension, right?
I was available for a pension because at that point, I wasn't doing anything corrupt.
That's true.
So when you go into, they had put me on medical leave for a year, and it's not medical leave. You're sitting at home. It's light duty. They take your weapons away and you sit at a security desk. So that's what I did for a year. And after a year, they sent me to 3 different orthopedics, and they said, look, he's never going to be 100%. And then you go in front of a police department medical board, and they review all your medical records and they recommend you for retirement. So I retired, and that was it. I was off the job. I was 29 years old.
So you're thinking, wow, it's not like I'm 49 or 59. I'm 29.
Bro, I was happy to be off the police department with all the shit I was involved in. Yeah. Just happy to get off clean. So
you were just like, okay, I did all that shit. Now I'll just do something else.
Exactly.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? What made you or what made the contact come back with Mr. Dowd?
What basically happened, I just became Mr. Mom, and my wife went back to work. And eventually, with about a year went by, I hadn't seen Dowd anymore because he's working in a different precinct, and there's really no reason for me to see him anymore. So 2 other cops, and here's where it gets real messy. 2 other cops come to me, knew what I used to do with Dowd, all the corruption. And one of the cops used to be a cocaine dealer before he became a cop, which shows you how shitty the investigations are into your background when you get on the job.
Right.
So he wanted to get back into selling coke. So he knew I had connections through Dowd to sell coke. They come to me, can you pick us up a piece and, maybe become our partner, because they didn't want to interact with Dowd. They wanted to go through me because they trusted me. They never worked with Dowd. So I call up Dowd. Now I'm sitting at home in my Long Island house. I don't have to do nothing. I call up Dowd. I go, hey, pick me up a Big A. Big A's 125 grams. Give him the money for it. He picks it up in Brooklyn, brings it home, drops it off at my house. I don't have to do anything. Now the other guys come by, pick up the piece, and I make, a commission on it. Eventually, I realize I'm getting pure cocaine from Dowd. It's coming right off the key. He's still picking up from Diaz. Eventually got arrested, and he was picking up from another dealer, and it's pure cocaine. So I'm getting pure cocaine. I'm like, why am I giving these idiots on Long Island, these other 2 cops, pure cocaine? So I start whacking it. I take half of it pure and give them the other half pure, and then I whack it with an inositol and give them a mix. And now I have a whole Big 8 that I got for free because they're paying for it because I'm mixing it. And then there's a lot of casual drug users at that time. And, you get a reputation, you become a drug dealer.
How long did that go on for?
That went on for a good 2 years.
Now, obviously,
I was making more on that than I made with Dowd off of Diaz.
I want people to go check out the film if they haven't. I want people to go read your book, which we'll talk about at the end. So we're not going to get into every single thing you did, but how does all this end for you? How does this shake out? You're making more money than you ever have. You're retired. You have nothing else you're doing. You're making big money. By the way, I wanted to ask you before we answer that question, what kind of things during all this? You're making a good amount of money per week, way more than your counterparts are making. What kind of things are you buying with this? Because obviously you're a smart guy. You know that I can't go out. Like if we liken it back to the mob, we look at Goodfellas, right? When they do the big Lufthansa score, people are buying cars and mink coats. You knew that wasn't going to be a way out. So what kind of things are you purchasing? You're doing like, you need a new oven. You buy the oven with cash.
For me, it was pretty simple. It was you take your paycheck, and at that time there's no direct deposit. So you got your paycheck, you put your paycheck in your checking account, and you pay your mortgage, your utilities, where you could show where your paycheck is going.
Right.
The cash items are things they're not going to track. You buy furniture, all your food you're buying cash. You don't pay by credit card. So basically, it's it was pretty simple to hide it. And then, of course, you're making so much, you got to stash a lot away. So
that's sometimes the thing about making money illegally. It's pretty easy to make it, as you know, but spending it is very difficult, as many criminals know. You can't just go out, at least smart people, you can't just go out. You have to start to, kind of show where you're getting it from. So
exactly.
How does all this end for you? Do you get any sense that, hey, wow, I've went from maybe taking a little money on the job to, I'm in all essence, a drug trafficker at this point.
Came straight out, ended up being a drug dealer.
Did you have any shame, Ken, at that point?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you have any shame at all? Like, did you think in your head, like, what am I doing here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I stopped at the end when we ended up getting busted. I was out of it. I wasn't doing nothing. When they raided my home, there was nothing there. So what happened, I was, you justify things in your mind. Selling to casual users. You're not on the corner selling to little school kids. You're selling to adults that are casual weekend users. But as you gain a reputation, now I have dealers coming to me. So I had like 4 or 5 dealers working for me. So instead of selling a gram or a small 8-ball to the casual user, now I'm selling to dealers who are buying an ounce from me. They're buying a big 8 from me. So I'm moving more product. And one of those dealers ended up selling to an undercover cop. They tapped his phone, and from his phone, it just spiderwebbed out into everybody else. Did you have
a strategy of, like, I know most people don't do this, but you obviously know when you're committing crimes, and at some point, it's pretty likely I'm going to get caught. Did you think about that day? Did you have an idea of what am I going to do when all the shoe comes down? Because you had already known, like, Dowd was doing shit he probably shouldn't be doing and buying stuff he shouldn't. And eventually he was kind of a loose cannon, was going to get you caught. You knew that you had people under you that likely if they were caught, it's all going to go up and they're just going to, talk about you. Did you have an idea of hey, this is what I'm going to do when this happens?
My exit plan was, in fact, when my house was raided and I was arrested, my house was up for sale. My exit plan was come to Florida. I mean, eventually I got here, not the way I wanted to get here, but that was my exit plan: to come down to Florida, get the fuck away from everything I was doing, everything I was involved in.
Did your wife knew the scope of what you were up to, right? Did she was pretty open, like she knew what was going on?
She was definitely she wasn't so much aware of what I was doing when I was a cop, because I wouldn't tell her things. She was aware money was coming in, not really how I was getting it. Once I started selling drugs at home, she was totally aware of that and 100% against it. She, stop. You can't be bringing this in the house. What are you doing? You're going to get busted. And, you get that arrogance about you. It's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to get busted. I was running the plates of every time I got a new user or a new dealer, I would run his plates, run his name, because I had connections in the police department to make sure they were not cops. Right. They weren't undercover. And eventually the kid who got caught, I told him, please, you got any new customers, give me their information and I'll check them out first. he got the undercover's information, but he sold to him before he gave me the information. So when I ran the guy's information, I found out he's an undercover cop. So I put my exit plan into strategy, and everything was out of my house. My house was up for sale. I'm trying to get out before it's all over. But by the time he told me he sold to the guy, they already got taps on everyone's phone.
That's always the problem with Ken, with people that do crimes. They always involve too many people, right? Some people don't just say, if a criminal could just do things on his own, right? It could run his own thing. He never had to deal with anyone else.
Yeah. You can always trust yourself.
Right. And let's say maybe one or two people that are very close to you, which you generally can trust. But so I want to ask you about the day you got pinched ultimately. Is it similar to where they come at 5 a.m. and kick your door in? How does it work?
It was at night.
For you, at least. Yeah,
for us, it was at night. They hit everybody's location at the same. Dowd was working with his partner. They went to the precinct he was working in. It was the 9-4 precinct he was working in at that time. They called him in. They grabbed him, cuffed him up. They tell him you're being arrested for a drug conspiracy out on Long Island. The other 2 cops that initially brought me into the drug transaction after I retired, they were up at the range in the Bronx. Internal Affairs went there, locked them up, brought them out to Long Island for me, and they raided everybody's house. They raided Dowd's house. They raided his partner's house. They raided my house, and they raided all the dealers' houses that got caught in this wiretap. So for me, I wasn't at home when the raids went down. The raids were like 10 o'clock at night. I went out to one of my dealers' houses to pick up money. The kid owed me money. I was trying to get all my money and get out. And when I was there for maybe 5 minutes and Suffolk County slammed the door, just like on TV, they come rushing in. I was like, that's it. It's over. Game is over. Initially, I thought we were getting robbed. I thought there was somebody coming in robbing us. And then, you see the police shields and everything. That's it.
So they take you down. What do they say to you right away?
They really didn't say much. If anything, they separated me from the kid with the wiretap because I think they had arrested the kid with the wiretap and he ended up cooperating. And that's how they got everybody else. But we all go down to, it was Riverhead, Suffolk County Riverhead. And at first I thought I was only being arrested for being in a drug dealer's home. And then eventually all the cops started coming in because they're coming from, Brooklyn precincts. So it was a longer trip outfit to Riverhead for them. And when they start coming in now, my wheels start spinning. And I realized this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. So
and they start throwing out, you start to kind of realize, okay, this isn't just something that I'm going to.
Yeah, this is more than a simple drug dealing on Long Island. This is involving all the cops I'm involved with.
And you're facing, probably, they give you numbers, right?
25 to life we were facing.
Yeah, they're giving you football numbers. Okay, so at certain point, did you ever get to the point where you said, because some people will say this is it. I'll go to jail. That's that.
That's exactly what it was. I told my wife, look, and divorce me, leave me, and move on with your life because I'm facing 25 to life. She said, "Oh no, wherever you go, I'm going to follow you. I don't care if I got to live in a trailer or a dumpster. I want to be close to you," which was wonderful. She was a great woman, and we were in for like 2 or 3 weeks because the bail was so high. It was a cash bail. Finally made bail, and I'm talking with my lawyer. I had a very good lawyer. It was his name was Marty Effman. He was Eric Nyberg's partner. Eric Nyberg is a lawyer who defended Amy Fisher, the Long Island Lolita, who happened to be arrested 2 weeks after me. So we were both in the office at the same time. And he tells me, look, they don't want to go to trial with this. They're just making a big deal about it in the paper. They'll probably offer you a plea deal, 8 to 10 years. You're a young guy. Take the 8 to 10 years. And, you'll be out when you're 40. I was 32 at the time, 31, 32. So that's what I was planning to do. Dowd didn't want that plan. He didn't like that plan. He's like, I'm not doing 25 years. Where did you get 8 to 10? My lawyer didn't tell me that. I was like, well, sit down with your lawyer, see what he says. And as time went on, he comes to me with a plan to hit a stash house in Queens he had multiple houses. So one of the houses he was renting out to 3 Colombians, and they obviously knew he was arrested because we were in every paper, we were on the news every night, and they went to him with this plan to hit a stash house. And
So he's like just complete.
His partner, he came to me with the plan.
He's just a complete lunatic criminal. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he's already thinking about the next score. He doesn't even care about what he's going to pay. Do you kind of think to yourself, I'm never going to get through to this fucking guy? Like, I got to do what I got to do. You know? I
tried for a good 2-3 weeks. Oh, we're not doing this. I'm absolutely not doing this. And then in those 2 or 3 weeks, the feds, now we were dealing with Suffolk County. Now the federal government had an investigation on us going back to 1988. This is 1992 now. So they contact my lawyer. And when they contact my lawyer to come in and, do a profit session with them, I told Dowd, I go, bro, feds are looking at us. They want my lawyer and me to come in and sit with them. He was like, what do they want? I was like, I don't know yet, but I'll let you know when I get back. So they were going in. I go and sit down with the feds, and they start peppering me with questions that they should have had no idea about. So I know there's other people already cooperating. Diaz was arrested in 88. His lieutenant was arrested. I was worried about Dowd's current partner because his current partner was doing the same shit with him in 1992 that I did with him back in 1987. And he knew everything I was involved with. So everything they were questioning me with, there was only a handful of people that should have known it. So somebody was talking somewhere. So when I left that profit session, I'm not doing nothing. Me and my lawyer walked out after like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. When I got home, Dowd is sitting on my stoop. He's like, what happened? What happened? And we go inside, sitting at my kitchen table. I was like, bro, somebody's fucking talking. Somebody knows something. We need to make our best deal possible. And he took his fist, pounded it on my kitchen table. He goes, that's all the more reason we need to do this thing. Talking about the hit on the stash house. And it wasn't only a hit on the stash house. His plan was after we hit the place to take our families and go live in Nicaragua. I was like, fuck, are you out of your mind? I'm not doing that. I'm not taking my wife and my kids to Nicaragua. This is not happening. We're not doing this. And he was adamant, man.
He was adamant. Right. So what
happens is I went back a second time to the federal government. I didn't tell him I went back a second time. And at that time, they give you another profit session. It's called Queen for a Day. You tell them about every crime you were ever involved in, and they won't use it against you. But you got to be completely honest. If they catch you in a lie, the deal's off and you get prosecuted for everything. So I went in and I was completely honest. And at the end of this I told him my whole criminal history. I told him, oh yeah, by the way, Dowd came to me with a plan to hit a stash house and kidnap a woman that lived in there. And their fucking mouths just drop open. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And then that's the whole thing comes down. They want me to go back out, find out more information about it, where or why. It was, it became a lot more involved than I expected it to be when I started cooperating.
So were the feds looking to like supersede this indictment and take it over and kind of run all this together and say
they took the whole Suffolk County case and rolled it into a RICO charge. Right. So I got hit with RICO.
Right. So you're, this goes from being like an 8, piece kind of sentence, little drug thing to this is a massive criminal indictment.
Yeah. And they're going back years. They're going back all the way back.
And you knew that there were people that were already talking anyway.
Yeah, it was obvious.
Okay. So as we know, this all kind of ends by you kind of get Dowd involved in this thing, or he get you involved. You kind of wire up, do your thing. And to this day, Dowd, says things about you. You say things back about him. You ultimately didn't serve any prison time for this. Michael Dowd did.
Right.
Let me ask you, when you think back to the 8 to 10 years or whatever, if you could have been dealing with a normal thinking individual, what would
we would have went off to jail hand in hand. We would have been partners in a fucking prison cell. But he did not want that. And he says it in the documentary. In my mind, I got to figure out a way around this. I got to get around it. And his way around it was, this stash house plan and skipping the country.
Did you ever think the Nicaragua thing, did you ever think to yourself at any point, like, oh, maybe we can actually do that? Like, did you ever?
Never. When he initially told us, he said it to myself, my wife, and his wife. The 4 of us went out to dinner while we were out on bail. And the 3 of us fucking looked at him like, are you out of your fucking mind? And,
he was
and
just
his wife came right out and said, "I'm not going to Nicaragua."
yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, it's kind of a wild.
And I'm a typical New Yorker. I've never been to the Empire State Building. I've never been to the Statue of Liberty. I live in my own little world. I didn't even know where Nicaragua was. I'm like, how do we even get there? He's like, oh, you just drive straight down through Central America. Oh, really? Okay.
I guess it is a plan. It's an elaborate one, but it wouldn't be easy to do.
Not like they weren't going to track us down, put us on America's Most Wanted.
Right. And by this point, you're national news, right? You're
news every night. Every night we're on the news.
So ultimately, Michael Dowd got 16 years in federal prison, served about 12. You moved on with your life. You've obviously were approached to do this film. I heard a story. You did a show many years ago with Artie Lang, which is pretty cool in its own right. And you talked about you actually shopped this to the idea to many people.
I did.
And ultimately it was made in. You actually mentioned you shopped the show to JD. Is that true? From the Stern Show? Is that true?
What happened was when I was on that medical leave and I was working the security desk, all the things I had done, I knew it was a movie in my head. So I just started writing down all my exploits. I was going to write a book or a screenplay. And luckily, when these morons raided my house, all that it was basically would have amounted to a confession because it was all my exploits in criminal activity written down on sheets of loose leaf paper in my bedroom. And they're just going through shit. So they found paper and they just threw it up in the air, not realizing what it was. So I started writing what ultimately became Betrayal in Blue prior to my retirement, prior to my arrest. And then once I was, once everything was over and we came down to Florida, I completed the whole thing, wrote the whole thing out, and I started trying to shop it. I was writing, publishers, and they didn't want to know nothing about it. By the time I was done, it was like 6-7 years later, and like, oh, that's old news. We don't want to know nothing about it. That was basically the responses I got from them. And then I wrote JD because Howard was talking to him one day about he wanted to be a director or producing films and all that. So I said, fuck, why not? No, I'll write JD. And the only reason I wrote JD is because I know Howard is going to promote anything that JD does. So I figured, that would have been a good idea. It would have been a good connection.
It's a wonder looking back. It's too bad JD never responded or did what he should have did, because it ended up turning into an absolutely terrific documentary. It came out in 2014. Like I said, I think one of the better documentaries I've ever seen, not just criminal documentaries. It's terrific stuff. It features you, it features Dowd, it features Diaz, all the players. I did want to ask, whatever happened to Baron Perez?
He was, when the federal indictments came down, he was rearrested. He ended up going along with everybody else. That was the only one who didn't get it. He tried to make a deal. They caught him in multiple lies because everybody else that cooperated told the truth. So everybody's stories all corroborated each other, and his story was totally different. So
hold on a second. That's interesting. So you're saying, in the grand scheme of things, you're saying that Michael Dowd has often since then tried to throw these stories out that everybody's bad that was involved with this because they did stuff with the government and I didn't. So you're alluding to the fact that Michael Dowd attempted to cooperate and the government wouldn't accept him.
He did. He sat down with the Southern District, same people I sat down with. He had a profit session just like I did, and they found him, and I got all the paperwork. They found him to be totally untruthful, and they let him loose. He fell back. He made an agreement with the Mullen Commission, which you see in the documentary where he's testifying live on New York One. And they gave him a deal because he was still facing 25 to life. And they ended up, I think they gave him 15, 16, and he did 11 and a half or 12.
Yep.
So he got time off for his cooperation as well. He's pissed at me because I wore a wire against him. But he basically did all the same shit I did. He cooperated. Right. Everybody did. Every player cooperated. Everybody.
Right. And in the end, he was the one that served 12 years in prison.
Exactly. It's they always go after the top guy, and the second guy they bring in for the cooperation, and the second guy gets the deal.
Right.
Because they want the top guy.
Just
And
to
in
kind of
this case, he
end,
was the top guy, and Diaz was already in jail.
right. So just to end on this, you were approached. This likely could be a film someday. Is that correct?
After the documentary came out, it premiered in 2015. Sony, there was a bidding war on it. Sony and I think Annapurna was in a bidding war over who gets the rights to it. Sony won out; they had more money, and we worked with them for like 4 years. Met multiple directors, multiple screenwriters, and eventually they dropped the project. And when the project was dropped, we were in limbo for about a year, and MGM picked it up about a year ago. And now we have new contracts with MGM. New director is Ben Stiller. Met him a couple of times, sat with him, and forgot who I told you the screenwriter was.
Either way, Ben Stiller. I mean, let me ask you.
Screenwriter is the guy from House of Cards.
Right. Yeah, I remember you told me that. Let me ask you, when it comes to Ben Stiller, I maybe just looking at you, I kind of could see it. Could you see Ben Stiller maybe playing a younger you? I could maybe see that.
I think we're basically the same age now. I'm pretty sure he's in his late 50s.
But I feel like he could pull off with the black hair, man.
How's he going to play a 20-something-year-old?
I don't know. I feel like he could. I still feel like, I mean, you both look pretty young, quite frankly. But
I mean, he's directing. Maybe he'll put himself in as a cameo. I don't know.
Who would play you in a film?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the younger actors in the in their 20s who they might use to portray. I heard possibly Shia LaBeouf for Dowd. So
that could work.
If that's how you pronounce his name.
Hey, have you ever seen The Wire?
I've seen The Wire. I've seen We Own This City. I've seen them all.
So I want to ask you about that, and then we'll wrap
Shield.
up. But yeah, I want to ask you about that when we wrap up. But there's a guy in season 2 of The Wire. He plays a guy called Nick Sabatka. He's an actor, Pablo Schreiber. I think he could play you. I think that could be a decent cast. So you've seen The Wire. You've seen We Own the City. You've seen The Shield. All these police shows, and now obviously only one is actually based on real events, which is We Own This City. On this show, we've also talked about the mafia cops. Obviously, I think when we look back on corruptness, and these are individuals that actually killed people,
right,
allegedly on behalf of the mafia. But when you look at something like We Own the City, do you feel that, and I don't, maybe you won't answer this, I don't know, but do you feel it's almost fate for a lot of these people that have become officers to want to maybe take a handout here or there? Is it almost destiny? I mean, it's hard. We're all human in the end.
In the beginning, you don't do anything, but you get exposed to the shit day after day after day. It wears you down, and eventually, you give in and you take it. I mean, imagine driving behind a Brinks truck every day. Every day, the truck doors open up and drops bag. The first day, you might turn it in. The 15th time, you're not turning that in.
Right, but Ken, I mean, all due respect, I mean, most of us wouldn't sell crack if we didn't have to. I mean, Wayne Jenkins literally stole money off citizens and then resold the drugs in the street. I mean, that's hard to understand. But I guess once you get into it where it's, hey, we're doing this and no one cares.
You justify everything in your head. You just justify everything.
I'll tell you what, a fascinating discussion would be you and him, Wayne Jenkins, the guy in the We Own the City, the real character. Man, that would be interesting to you all talk. Real quick before we go, Michael Dowd has been out there. He does a lot of media stuff nowadays. Do you have any ill will to him? Do you talk to him at all?
No, we spoke at the beginning. We did a scene for the documentary that was edited out. They surprised me. They flew me into Brooklyn and we went to the 7-5 precinct. He was standing there. I'm sure they wanted some type of confrontation, but we saw each other, gave each other a hug, and we really just talked about old times. Once the documentary came out, social media people start taking sides and it tears you apart. And we took jabs at each other. And I haven't talked to him in a couple of years.
Interesting. What I'm going to recommend to everyone watching this right now, I'm going to put some of the links to some of your work in the description. I want to first talk about your book, Betrayal in Blue, the shocking memoir of the scandal that rocked the NYPD. And you kind of talk about the story behind the documentary. I urge people to go check out the book. The link to it is in the description. Just terrific stuff. Really well written, really well done. Also, if you haven't, go check out the 7.5. I'll leave some information for that. But you also just started a YouTube channel, and you've joined the ranks of all of us crazy people on YouTube. And you're talking about police corruption. What are you doing on your YouTube channel? There's a link to the description. Everyone go subscribe. What do you talk about on that channel, Ken?
Basically, police corruption, guys that have crossed the line, dirty cops. I'll do I usually try to keep it brief because YouTube people sort of have a very short attention span. You know, you look at your analytics and it's you got an hour video and they watch 10 minutes of it. So I try to keep it 20 minutes or less. So I'll do two stories, maybe one story if it's a little more involved. And then I do a Q&A about my own life. People send me questions that I answer. A lot of the earlier videos, I get deeper into stories that are not in the book, that are not in the documentary. And it's just an unending fountain of information. I mean, cops they don't learn, bro. They're getting arrested every day. There's a cop getting arrested. And I try to stay away from the simple arrests like DUI, domestic dispute. I mean, these are guys that are doing bad shit.
Go check out all the stuff Ken's working on and has worked on in the description. Ken, one question that I promise to let you go. I always ask this to people, whether you're a criminal, whoever you are. You look back on your life. You were a cop. You had a civil service job. You were doing something honorable. Look at all the things you did. You look at where you are now. You're living your life. Maybe this is a dumb question to you, but I've had people actually say yes. Was it all worth it? The life you led?
Fuck no.
No.
Even once this is over, once the movie's over, I can't wait to go back into obscurity, man. I want to put this shit behind me and not worry about it. You know, the YouTube channel will be done. I'll take it down. I don't want nothing from it. I would have loved to have had an honorable career. Did my 20 years like a lot of my friends. They went up through the ranks. They went off the details, and then they're living an honorable life. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. I took the wrong path, and I paid my own price for it. I might not have gone to jail, but I paid a price, and that's that.
Do you miss your life back then?
Do I what?
Do you miss just being a cop?
I definitely miss the camaraderie and hanging out with the guys. Like I have a small group of friends now, or I have a lot of people that write me because of the documentary and the book that want to come and hang out with me. They're not real friends. I mean, they know me because of the doc. They know me because of the book. They think they know me, and from the YouTube too, because someone watches the documentary now, they think they're watching us, myself, Dowd and the other guys in it. They think they're watching us now. That shit happened in the 80s. That's not us now. So you really don't know us.
Fascinating life. Well, I have a feeling you'll end your life just back to relative anonymity, and it's a wild story nonetheless, and it's been a wild ride in your life. Ken Yarell, go check out everything he's working on. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel, man. Listen, I'm going to tell all you people that watch this show, you guys helped out other people. Go check his channel out. This guy's doing some interesting shit. We're going to see a lot more of him. I know maybe he might not want that, but it's a great story. It's a fascinating story. Ken Yarell, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing some of your story, man.
And my channel is my name, Ken Yarell.
Yeah, I'm going to put the description in the chat.
Great. Yeah,
the chat below, the link. Very easy to find. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.